All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to our forum time on allyship and allyship skill builder. So we're just getting combobulated. If you can be discombobulated, you can be combobulated. So, all right, so people are deciding whether they want to be in the room, out of the room. We'll leave the door open for just a few more minutes while I'm still talking, because sometimes that's the signal for people that, oh, it's actually starting. So, in fact, I just ramble for a little bit while people continue to come in the room. And they're coming. So welcome. I'm Reverend Sara. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Community and Faith Development here. If you are online joining us, welcome. If you're in the room joining us, welcome. If you are watching this recording later, welcome. And if you have any questions and you want to follow up with me later, my email is on the website, and it is dcfd@ouuc.org. And that's helpful for people who are watching the recording later, so that's for you. All right. Arlene, would you mind closing the doors as we... Thank you. So this forum will be mostly small group work, but we're going to go over a few things first before we break into small groups. And we expect to be done by 12:30. So, Carbon, could you give me my next slide? Thank you. So for opening words today, this quote by Martin Luther King Jr. "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." So we're here today to talk about how to not be silent. And with that, I'm going to invite Janae to share a bit about the inspiration for today.
Hello. I'm Janae Wolfram. I use she, her pronouns.
We'll have to move that microphone up a little bit.
Oh, is that right?
You're ever so slightly taller than me.
Is that better? Okay. I really didn't fully appreciate what allyship meant and the impact of being an ally until I really looked back over the years. So I want to share just some little experience of mine with attending the Chicago Pride Parade every year. As a young couple, my boyfriend, now husband, and I were invited to go to the Chicago Pride Parade with friends. My friend David was in tears when he saw us arrive, gave us tight hugs and thanked us for coming. It really was the first time that it occurred to me and really struck me that he didn't always feel this love and this support. So we decided at that point that we were going to go to the Pride Parade every single year and made a point to do so. Canceled other plans and missed other things to make sure we always went to the parade. As parents of young kids, we didn't think anything of packing up our babies and taking them to the Pride Parade. Something new happened when we started to bring our kids. People had big reactions to seeing a family coming to the Pride Parade. So every single year, at least a couple of people would approach us in tears, share their stories of estrangement from their family, and talk about how much they appreciated seeing us there. As you can imagine, the Chicago Pride Parade is an enormous event. There are a lot of people. So to take the time to stop someone and have a conversation in all of the hustle bustle was a big deal. And I could tell how important it was to those people who did approach us to share their stories and let us know they appreciated our attendance. As the kids got older, they had sporting events and things on the weekends that often kept us from going to the Pride Parade. So in a stand against missing the Pride Parade, which I was always disappointed to do, we would wear our Pride garb from head to toe to the events that we went to on the weekend. So these were often in conservative counties where we would attend a ball game or a volleyball tournament, and there would be hundreds of kids there. So the day would always be full of conversations about why we were dressed the way we were and what that meant to us. And And I just have to believe that in those groups of hundreds and hundreds of kids, there were gay kids in that group. There were gay children in those red communities, and they saw us. And I have to believe there was an impact for them, seeing that there was allyship for them. So, I do think that these small moments and small events where we showed allyship really provided a beacon for individuals, for kids, for people in our community to know that we were allies, to know that we were safe to be with, to know that they could approach us if they needed something. And as I had friends with high school age kids coming out or starting to have conversations with their parents, those moms often called me, and we had conversations about what that meant and what they could do to support their kids. So again, to me, this was just the way we were existing. And in the middle of raising 3 kids, there's thought given to some of this, but really not appreciating the full impact until looking back over the decades, 30 years later. So don't underestimate the impact that your allyship can have on someone's life, because we're really all out here looking for a beacon to remind us that we're loved and cared about. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Janae. So it was mentioned that there would be prizes for today. The prize is we have pins that say, "You are safe with me." And these will be distributed at the end. And if you're online, your information is going to get collected so that I can get a pin to you as well. When you get your prize, your pin that you can wear, we're also going to give you a bookmark that shows what you're committing to if you wear this. So things that you would be committing to would be to educate yourself about bias and intersectional discrimination of all kinds, to listen to and follow the leadership of people who are most impacted by harm, to be a pronouns ally by sharing your own pronouns and respecting the pronouns of others, to advocate for gender-neutral bathrooms and the use of gender-inclusive language, to intervene in harassment when safe to do so and when you hear discriminatory language used, to help create accessible and inclusive safe spaces for marginalized people, and to advocate for legal and systems change to end discrimination. So please do, before you leave today, and if you leave early, just come grab one, get a bookmark and a pen. And the rest of this time now will be a little bit of what are the skills to help you do those things that you're committing to doing. So if I could have the next slide, please, Carmen, thank you. So there's planned allyship, like showing up to the Pride Parade. And then there's all the times that you weren't expecting that conversation and you were just going about your business doing something else. Now, educators sometimes talk about finding teachable moments, the moments that you didn't expect, you didn't have the lecture prepared, but suddenly there's the opportunity for some education. You also in life can encounter critical moments where suddenly you didn't have the lecture prepared. You didn't have the card all filled out with what you wanted to say, but the opportunity is now to make a difference. And so we're gonna have some education around what you might do in those critical moments, but also it's more important to go ahead and respond to a critical moment imperfectly than it is to wait until you have a perfect answer, because guess what? It won't ever be perfect. So can I have the next slide, Carbon? So we're going to take some time to think about preparing ourselves with what we'd like to do in the best case scenario when we encounter those critical moments. If we were at our best, what might we say? And just having done even that, even if you only took 5 minutes to think through what you would like to say when you encounter bias and discrimination, you'll be more prepared than if you hadn't thought about it. There's a few things to keep in mind, and those are on the next slide. So we do encourage, everyone encourages, that you do assess the risk of speaking up. This is going to be different for each individual and each circumstance that you're encountering. So this is knowing your own power and privilege. This is knowing the power dynamics in the situation that you're currently in. And assessing how many other people around you are also going to be your allies. Those are all things to keep in mind. And your safety, just like in a first aid class, they say, assess the scene. Is it safe? It's the same thing in an intervention. Are you safe to do so? What are the possible outcomes and impacts? The next thing that we really would encourage you to do is prioritize the agency of the person most affected. So it's really not allyship to just do things for a person that they don't want you to do. That's not allyship. That's paternalistic and controlling and a lot of other things. So if there's a person who is being targeted or affected, look to them for consent for your intervention, for what they would like you to do, and look to empower them actually to be the person in charge in the situation as much as possible. And that's going to always depend on what you're facing, but do look to the person most impacted for what they want. And then the last one we have on this slide is understanding the dynamics of change. And that's kind of just a fancy way of saying that you have to take the long-term view of outcomes here. So it's a fancy way of saying you don't know how much change you're actually going to be able to make because you're just planting a little tiny seed, and things take a really long time. So if a person continuously hears, "That's not funny, dude," when they tell bad jokes, eventually it may lead to changed behavior. But the first time they hear you say, "That's not funny," they may not seem to have, like it just bounces right off like Teflon. So the dynamics of change means you're not necessarily going to see an immediate result. And we encourage you to just keep on trying. And then, the next slide, please, Carbon. Thanks. And then there's 4 skills that we recommend. The first is interruption. So interruption is always possible in some way. I'm going to say that again. It's always possible in some way. Doesn't mean that you interrupt in a big way in every situation, but if you don't do anything, most often agreement is assumed. So even if your interruption is just to withdraw, you've still interrupted your participation. There's everything from you just stop participating and withdraw, all the way up to that you full on stop what is happening. And then there's everything in between. There's the "that's not funny," there's the "I don't agree." There's many ways to interrupt in some way. The second step after interruption is to question the person who is expressing bias or discrimination, or who has done an action that was inadvertently biased. And so that's where you can really start to show curiosity to them. Why do you think that? Where is that coming from? Lots of studies show that having somebody ask questions has more impact on a person than being told that they're wrong. So those questions of curiosity actually do move people more toward changed behavior. Then leaning into education as the next step. So after you've been curious and open to hearing from a person, then you can now give them some new information. So why do you think that? Oh, interesting. Did you know that actually blah, blah, blah? You can give them the new information. You can say, actually, that's not happening. Actually, that was misinformation that was put out. Actually, that's... And you can also share from personal experience. Actually, I know for a fact from personal experience that this is something, this is how my experience is, or my friend's experience is. And the fourth one we have on here is echoing, because one person saying something is great, but if other people in the situation also say, yeah, me too. Yeah, actually, I also didn't think that was funny. Actually, I also. So, just because you see one person intervening, don't leave them doing it all by themselves, right? You can echo, you can jump in, you can also then be an ally to the allyship. So, it's actually really that simple. There's not a whole lot of rocket science for me to give you here. I do have a couple funny memes, though. So, so here we have what an odd thing to say out loud. And then the next one, another cute animal. I'm surprised you feel comfortable saying that. Yeah. So if those cute animals can say those things, you can too. So here I'm going to pause and take some general questions. Please wait for the microphone to be brought to you so that everybody online can hear too. And then after a few general questions, we're going to break up into small groups to discuss scenarios of things that you might encounter and what might you do as an ally. And we do have facilitators for each group for that. So first, some general questions. Does anyone have a general question?
And I realize it's situational, but in assessing, I'm not sure the word is danger, but assessing the risk of speaking up in certain situations. I don't have that natural sense of danger that most people were born with. And so I get myself in trouble. It'd be nice to have some cues how to stop that.
Yeah. Alex, are you wanting to respond or you have a question next? Your next question? Okay. So I would recommend, Mary, that one thing that you start to do, especially if you don't have an inborn strong sense of your own danger, is look for cues from others around you. But also, it's really a matter of when are you feeling that you're in a position of privilege and power in a situation, and when are you not? So I would say, for me, if I am in a circle of people talking and they are all also white, like I am, then I feel that I have a position of privilege and power to speak up in that situation. If I'm in a circle of all men and I'm the only woman in the circle, I might not feel that same level of safety to speak up. So it is partly just that assessing of where you feel secure in your position and your privilege power in that circle. Because we're not necessarily just talking about physical danger. And Alex, yeah.
Okay, so this is more of a statement of a technique that I kind of learned in peaceful parenting childhood development techniques, but I have applied it to adults and peaceful parented adults through conflict using this, is when the child is misbehaving or they're angry and they hit another child, instead of giving the attention to the child who is misbehaving, you check on the child who is the victim. You start giving them care and checking in with them and ignoring, as long as they're being physically safe, the behavior of the child that is misbehaving, and instead, like, are you okay? And kind of going along my life saying of build what you love, not fight what you hate, is then you're pouring love into the victim and showing allyship that way. And that's a more passive aggressive thing than having a direct confrontation if you don't feel comfortable, of just starting a discussion with the victim. Hey, do you want to go over here? And, you know, distracting and interrupting the whole entire situation without having to call attention to it if you're not feeling safe. So it's a more passive, like, we're just going to ignore the negative and we're going to focus on the victim and building them up and making sure that they're okay and safe. And then that way it also displays what we're trying to do, because a lot of kids, what is that called? Modeling. Modeling behavior for what we want to see instead of engaging in negative feedback loops.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. That also goes along with that recommendation of prioritizing the agency of the person most affected. So another example that might be with adults for something like that is that if you see someone being harassed on the bus or somewhere, that you could go and sit next to them and just engage them in conversation, right? So you don't have to address it to the person who's harassing. You can instead now give the person who's being harassed a companion and show that you're with that person. Yeah, Frank.
I think today's theme of presence is applicable here. Just being present with a person who is being, being harmed by activities is important. I think of Jackie Robinson when he broke into the major leagues. He's the first black player. He was getting all kinds of hate thrown at him, and the white shortstop for the Dodgers, who became the captain of the team, Pee Wee Reese, went over to Jackie in the middle of the stadium, put his arm around him in a gesture that showed everyone that he wasn't going to stand for that hatred. And that went a long way to changing. In fact, that action really shifted things quite a bit for Robinson, even though he had to put up with that stuff for his whole career. That gesture really meant a great deal.
Yeah, thank you for that story, Frank. That's a great example. Yeah. Maybe one more, if there's one more out there. Or is there anything online, Carbon? Okay. All right. Well, then we're going to break into our small groups for some scenario discussions. These scenarios I've written out are varied. Some of them, there's an impacted person present, and some of them, there's not an impacted person present. Some of them have different power dynamics. Some of them are small group, and some of them are large public. So there's different things to think through with each of those, of what you might do. There's also no one right answer. So don't get too bogged down in your small groups trying to find the perfect right answer. Rather, just engage in thinking through what you might do and hearing some thoughts from others. So we're going to have 20 minutes in our small groups to work through these scenarios. And we have facilitators in person and online. So we'll put the online people into a breakout room. And I'm looking for groups, I think, of about 4, 5 at most in a small group. So would my facilitators please raise your hand? I'm going to hand you your packets, and then other people are going to find you. Go ahead and wrap up. We're bringing back our online people. Sorry, I was too quiet, then I was too loud. And you can stay seated where you are, or you can just spin back around so you're looking at me, whatever's comfortable for you. And Carbon, let me know when our online people are back. They just got back. Welcome back. All right, so I just want to process a little bit of what happened in your small conversations. And first, I'm wondering if anyone noticed anything in any of the scenarios about that question of how safe are you to intervene? Were there noticings around safety with different scenarios? Would anyone like to comment on anything they noticed? Reverend Mary will bring you the microphone if so.
Well, we talked about safety for the bus scenario, and we had some experts in the group who were drawing on years of experience driving a bus. So it was, she pointed out, to note whether the person seemed intoxicated or on drugs.
Yeah, makes a big difference in the safety.
I actually had a friend of a friend who was killed doing that exact scenario in Portland. So.
Yeah. I'm sorry for your friend of a friend, and yes, the intervention in public incident has had real consequences in real life.
So mine is a good notice. We were all talking about the one that was a hiring interview, and that we all work for companies that just wouldn't be acceptable. So anybody would say it, which is different than it was not that long ago. So
Yeah. It's a good thing to notice. Yay, progress.
Yeah, I think as far as corporate hiring is concerned, it all starts at the top. And you have to have management buy-in. They have to set policies for the corporation as a whole, and all that has to percolate down through HR to every department.
Yeah. Different levels of power to affect change, for sure. Yeah. Oh, okay. Hold on till the microphone comes to you, and then.
I was just wanting to, okay. I was just wanting to express that I had a situation where when I went to college, I went to an all-male school. And so that put me in an environment that certainly would think in certain instances the same about certain things, or there might be some questions about whether a person might be gay or not in that group. But it was never a problem. It was funny. I think we all recognized that there were differences that they might have, but we just didn't bring them up. Yeah. Well.
No, okay. All right. So I'm also wondering if for noticings around agency of the people most affected. Did you notice in some scenarios where you could really support a person's agency, others where it was not as easy? And would anyone like to comment on that?
So we talked a lot about the story of the Muslim girl on the bus, and there was a lot of talk around, going and sitting next to her, and that it's different. I as a white male, I would think twice about going and sitting next to a young Muslim girl. That might not feel comfortable for her. So I would assess the situation, and maybe the best thing I could do would be to sit behind them, or if I was with someone else, ask them if they would be comfortable going and sitting next to them. But I am sometimes aware of the fact that I'm a big white guy, and that's scary for some people.
Yeah, that's a great observation. We're intervening as the person we are and bringing all of our own power dynamics and perceptions of that others hold for us into our intervention. So it could look very different for, a grandmotherly looking woman to come up and be like, can I sit next to you? than for a strange man that you don't know to come up and say, "Can I sit next to you?" And those are things that you have to think about. What are you bringing to your intervention and your allyship? Yeah. Any other observations about supporting other people's agency? Yeah.
Thank you. I guess the thought that's in my mind is that, respecting somebody's agency, it's a delicate thing because you don't want to, especially if you are coming in with all your white privilege, you don't want to swoop in and rescue somebody who didn't ask to be rescued. And it's that tension that, I would love to explore more about how do you do this in a way that does not, that is not disrespectful of the power that that individual has and their autonomy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely worth exploring further because it is very delicate at times, and I would just encourage that don't not intervene because you're afraid of disrespecting their agency, but also as you intervene, watch for their reaction, and if they say back off, respect that. Yeah.
So I want to speak to that very subject. I'm lesbian. I've been lesbian for over 70 years, stepped into the culture when I was a kid, have loved every day of it. Recently, a lovely person approached me and said that as a lesbian, if ever you feel in danger, I will give you safe harbor. And I kind of laughed and said, I feel fine, thank you. And that was a lovely, lovely gift. I thought about it for a couple of days and I thought, I feel totally shamed by myself. I reached out to that person and thanked that person for that graciousness and told that person, I will gladly take safe harbor with you if I need it. Mm. So I learned a lot about accepting help when I need it. It was fabulous.
Mm. Thank you for that story, Lee. Yeah. And I saw a hand over here.
Thank you. Just to add that you can ask, and in most cases, getting consent, if at all possible, is the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was also saying, and this comes from my kid who's transgender, that discussions like this, it would be good if there was more participation of the people who might be impacted as well. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 Excuse me, Jen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would encourage you, so if you long to hear the voices of marginalized people and people most impacted, and you don't have that in your life, there are at this point so many resources being put out by people who are actively wanting to share this perspective. And, so seek them out on their YouTube channels, seek them out with their written books, seek them, and then support those efforts with your financial support for their work.
I would say too, on one of the popular streaming channels, Will Ferrell put out a documentary called Will and Harper, and his best friend of 30 years came out as transgender, and they went on a road trip together and on purpose went to places where his friend Harper previously went as a man and wanted to see if they'd get the same reaction as a woman. And they went into some scary places and were surprised by the love and generosity they got. And then they went into some large, busy public places and were surprised by the amount of animosity that they got. So it's a wonderful, wonderful movie to open your eyes and get one guy's perspective.
Just to add to that, I think another strong message in that movie is that you don't have to have all the answers and you don't have to know exactly how to handle it. You can just be with your friend and learn as you go.
Yeah. All right, and one more on this topic, and then we'll ask another question.
My youngest adult child is transgender and is the DEI person for the Department of Labor and Industry for the state of Oregon. So I've learned a lot from my child. And one of the things that Reese says all the time is when you're in these situations, just know that sooner or later you're going to F up. You will. You're just going to, it's going to happen, and just give yourself grace about that, because it's really easy to say, I'm sorry. I realize that was not the right thing to, whatever it was, say or do. I'll try to do better next time.
Yeah. Yeah, rupture and repair is much better than just distance. So get into proximity, make a mistake, fix it, repeat. Yeah, yeah. So one last question. What might your next step be in feeling prepared to be a better ally when you see the need for allyship?
I just want to take just a second to say, as someone who uses they, them pronouns and is trans and out in this community, that I would like to encourage you all to correct people when they misgender me. I try to introduce myself with my pronouns. I happened at least twice today that I was misgendered. So practice is something that I encourage you to do, and have grace when you get corrected. And I encourage you to know the gender expansive and trans people in this community here at OUUC, and to know their pronouns. And I really appreciate when people give me their pronouns as well, because I don't like to assume. There are lots of people of ages and sizes and disability and expression, and you don't know their pronouns until you do. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Mary, for running around the room.
For me, I am realizing I have a lot to learn, and so I want to stay open and learn from people, talking with people. I was telling the group, I have come to the point where I will ask, what are your pronouns? Because that, to me, is the direct way to find out, and I have no problem giving my pronouns, and I want to continue to learn and grow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, anyone else want to share? We've got just one more minute. Okay.
Mary's getting her steps in today. I kind of wanted to build on the idea of what he said as a straight white male sitting next to the Muslim girl. And then we were talking, me and Cindy were talking about the fact that people are less likely to punch or hit a grandma type situation, right? So you kind of talked about assessing the risk and kind of looking at where you are in the scale of, what's a good word? I kind of want to say confrontation, but that's like, how are they going to interpret your intervention? So if you are a big, strong, strapping young man coming up and going, hey, rah, 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 that's going to be more confrontational than, you know, a little grandma coming up and saying, oh, that's not a nice way to speak. They're going to be less aggressive towards the little grandma. So kind of taking that moment and assessing where you are in the scale of confrontation, and assessing how much risk that you're willing to put I don't want to say risk like putting yourself in, but ...
Yeah. So I would just encourage you all to do a little self-reflection on your own position. What are your identities? And where do those identities give you privileges? And where do those identities put you at risk? And in what situations do you feel comfortable exercising privilege and power? And in what situations do you not? And it's different for everyone, and it's going to be different in each situation. And sometimes you have privilege in that situation, and you can use it for good. And sometimes you don't. And in that case, take care of yourself. Yeah. So we're going to wrap this up here, and I'm just going to thank our volunteer facilitators. Thank you all for being here to do this. This is just a first step. These are not all the answers, and I encourage you to keep on your journey of learning and working on how to be an ally and move that arc of justice ever so slightly, inch by inch. We all just put our shoulder in and lean, and it bends towards justice. So thank you for doing a bit of that today. And please, before you leave, take a pen and a bookmark and our appreciation. So thank you all so much.